Hey there, Matt Scratch here. So today I have to change the power steering pump on my 2000 Dodge Neon, and I'll admit this is a result of my off-roading in the car. After our mud bogging video, the pump was making a lot of noise, and I suspected I overheated it while I was doing that muddy hill climb and weaving back and forth in the deep mud. Just overworked it and overheated it, so it's been 3 weeks since we did that, but now the power steering fluid's all burnt and there's evidence of some metal shards in the system. Not going to show on camera, but it just doesn't look real healthy in there, and we've been smelling a bad smell, so before it gets any worse I'm just going to go ahead and change it. So I've actually got this used pump, and this is off my old Neon, the one I used to have in the plowing videos, the camouflaged one, and it's actually got 315,000 kilometers, which is just shy of 200,000 miles, so pretty impressive, and it was still running good when I removed it, so I'm going to go ahead and stick it on here because it's what I have and it's free. Okay, so the new pumps never come with a pulley on them, so you will need this pulley puller and installer kit. And they're not terribly expensive to buy. I think I paid $45 for this one, or I think you can rent them some places. Anyways, this is a friction fit pulley. It presses onto there, so you need a tool to remove and to install it. So I'll show you how that works in a minute, and of course you'll need your belt tool. This is one I just made up, but a belt tool of some sort to remove your belt. Okay, so I'm going to start by removing the drive belt from the pump. Now you should probably start by disconnecting your negative battery cable. I'm not going to, that's my own risk, but I would recommend you do so. Wow, there's a lot of end play there. Little up and down play too. Definitely toasty. So if you've got compressed air handy, definitely just go around the pump and dust everything off. And that'll just prevent any extra chance of dirt getting into the system from stuff around the pump as you got those lines open and exposed. Okay, so you'll notice that there's 3 equally spaced holes in these pulleys, and that is to stick a 13mm socket through. That's where your fasteners are that mount it through this bracket. There's 3 fasteners in here. I need to spin the pulley, and a 1/4 inch ratchet and a deep 13mm socket is what you need to get at it nicely. And so I'll just remove those and get back with you. So when you're undoing these 3 bolts, they're quite long, so you will need to remove them completely before you can spin the pulley to get to the next one. So do start with this one, and then do the bottom one, and last do the top one, because the bottom one here has some interference with the frame rail. It's a bit trickier to get at, and you don't want to be fumbling with it if the pump's all loose and flopping around in there. So do the easy one last. So there are some fasteners on the back side of the pump as well, and actually you should remove those before you take that last bolt out on the front side. That'll probably make your life a bit easier, and you'll likely have to take out that lower one for sure. The upper one you can just loosen because you can see it's in a notch there. Okay, well I got the front 3 bolts out. I took those 2 bolts back there completely out because I have to take the upper one out anyways to put in the other pump, and it does feel like it's loose in here. So I'm just going to try and rock it out. Yeah. See, sometimes they do stick between those two plates in there, and I have had to loosen this back plate a little just to free it up. But this pump's actually not been in very long because I put this entire engine in the car about a little over a year ago. So the pump was off then. So now that it's off, I'm going to get a drain pan underneath. I'm going to tip it up and get the high pressure line off the bottom first, because I can access it a lot better once I tip it up. You can see it's right there. So I'll get that off, and that'll drain the system. And then I just got to take the return line off up here, and then I can swap the new pump in. That ended up being a 18 millimeter for the high pressure line. Okay, so I've just got to remove the low pressure line from the pump here. And I just did this last so there'd be no mess, so everything drained out the toboggan into my catch pan. Okay, so the pump is now removed, and I'm just setting up the puller on it. I don't actually need this pulley, as I have a pulley for the used pump I'm installing, but in the interest of making this video a complete how-to for you, I'm going to remove this pulley and show you how it's done. So number one here, you don't want anything binding up, so get yourself some oil and put a little oil in the threads down in the middle there, and then you fit these two halves on like that, and then this thing has one of these studs in it already. That's two pieces there. So you thread the correct stud that has the same threads as down in there into there, and thread this on it, and then this nut threads down over here, and it'll hook on these. So I'll show you when it's set up. Okay, so you can see how this is hooking under this edge on the pulley, and then this nut that's on this stud, it spins up like this, and it'll start to pull on that. So there's these two halves that go here, and then there's a sleeve that drops over, and that retains everything tight enough. And then you thread that up, and at the same time you hold this so that it doesn't put any pressure on anything. Okay, so our puller here is 1/2 inch on this and 21 millimeter on the lower nut. So I'm just finishing up pulling this off here. It's already kind of to the point of looseness. I was working on the floor there because it was really stiff to start with, but now it's almost off. And those creaking noises are totally normal. It's just the vibration going through the plastic pulley. The part that you're actually pulling on isn't plastic, it's got a metal insert in the middle of the pulley. So. And there we go. Our pulley's off. Okay, so this is our new used pump, and what you want to do is clean up your pulley really good in the center hole, and might as well give it a good wipe off while you're at it. And then you want to wipe this off really good, and you want to again oil your center hole, and then you want to, I just like to, because this is a used pump, I drip some oil down there, oil that seal up, kind of give it a full revolution to make sure that whole seal's oiled, and then I wipe around there to get off the excess and the excess dirt, and wipe the shaft clean, leave a little film of oil on it so that that new pulley is going to press on there nicely. So to use this puller to put it back on, you first put this thrust washer down on top the pulley like that, and then there's a bearing. Drop it with the roller sides down on there, and then same nut that you use to pull with, you're now using to push. So you thread that down there. Okay, so now you just tighten instead of loosen. Put my snipe on there and smoothly run it down. Okay, so I was having problems with this stud coming loose in the pulley. When I was turning this, it was loosening this and spinning the center stud out instead. So I'm just going to try and tighten it, and I need to hold the pulley when I do so. So I'm just going to try and hold it through the hole there with the pry bar and give this a good snug so it doesn't... So if you run into that problem, just try that. Okay, so I've got the pulley on, and you just keep going until it stops, because this washer here, it'll come down tight. And if you actually look, there's a bit of a bevel on the end of the shaft, so it'll literally catch on the bevel and it won't be able to move anymore. So you'll feel it stop. Just don't force it anymore at that point, and you'll be able to see on the back side that it's almost touches the pulley. I mean, it gets very, very close to the pulley. So if you can still see the shaft in there or something, you definitely haven't gone far enough. It comes within less than 1/8 of an inch of the housing there. So it's a very tight precision fit. And I did end up having to use my impact to get this on tight enough because it kept breaking loose. So maybe don't put oil in those threads in there, like I said in the beginning, because that was a bit of a problem. It came loose for me a few times. So if I hadn't oiled in there, it might not have had as much of a tendency to do that. So I'm just installing the new pump, and I've got the return line on there, and I'm about to put the high pressure line on. And you want to make sure that you change this O-ring on the end here. This one's all compressed. It's even got a tear in it. So I've got a new one here I'm going to slip on before I put that together. Make sure I don't get any leaks. Okay, well, the lines are tight and the pump slid back into place, and we're about to put the fasteners back. So what I like to do, as always, take a little 3-in-1 oil and just put a dab on each one. And it makes it so much nicer for reassembly when you can just put everything together with your fingers. Okay, so when you're tightening these bolts, I've put the top ones in first, the back one first, and then I put the one in the front here, and that keeps the pump lined up this way. Then you'll easily be able to get the other bogging one in by just swinging it down a little. And then go ahead and put the lower one on the front, and don't tighten any of these. Just sort of finger tight them all until you get them all in, because things won't line up good if you tighten the first one. You won't get the rest in nicely. So and down here, because there's a clearance issue with the frame rail, you'll have to use a short socket with your fingers just to get that one started. Once it's gone down a bit, you'll be able to switch back to your deep socket and tighten it up with the ratchet. Okay, well, I've got the pump all installed, and you can see very little end play in this one. A lot less than the other one. I've cleaned the cap off really good, so I'll get the cap off. Now we're going to top off the system, and I've left the belt off on purpose because I'm going to rotate the pulley by hand to purge the air through, and I'll also be jacking up the front of the car and moving the wheels back and forth to purge the air out of the rack. So you can see it. Just pumping it when I roll it over just by hand like that. If you start it up right away and you don't do anything to get the air purged through, it'll actually foam up in the reservoir here, and it'll be very hard to get the air out of it then. Okay, so I've got the car jacked up now, and I'm just going to be turning the wheels lock to lock really slowly, and that'll get the air purged out of the rack, and the fluid level will drop down in the reservoir. Okay, so we got the reservoirs all full, the air's purged out, and now we want to take some brake clean and clean off any excess, especially off the pulley, and then we can put the belt back on. Make sure you take your belt out of this area, don't leave it hanging down in there while you're doing this work, because you could get oil in the belt and then it will be ruined. So just brake clean everything off, especially where the belt rods and the pulley and everything. You want to make sure there's no oil there. It's going to get on the belt. Okay, now we're good to put our belt back on. We'll start it up here, and it will probably make a little noise initially. Okay, so that went pretty good. You can see there's a few a little bit of foam there from when it first started, but it's not bubbling at all now. Some vehicles that have, you know, complicated systems with coolers in them and stuff may be more difficult to purge out. So if you are getting foam in the reservoir here, just allow it to sit for a while so that the foam settles down, and then try it again and just keep purging more, you know, turning the wheels back and forth and just starting it, and then let it sit with the cap off for the air to rise out. And your goal is to have no bubbles in here. You know that all the air is purged when all the bubbles are gone. So I did turn the wheels back and forth directly after I started it to purge any residual air out of the rack. So a keen observer may notice that I have overfilled the system a slight bit here, and for that I have just a tool, turkey baster. So buy yourself some cheap turkey basters. I use these for brake fluid for draining out the master cylinder reservoirs as well, so I have a separate one for that, and then this one's for oil products. Okay, and I'm just gonna, I've got the drain pan down there still. Yeah, one more like that. Now I've got the fluid level set right on the cold full mark, and I've got everything cleaned up top, and I've cleaned and dried everything up underneath too. And then I'm just going to keep an eye on it for the next day or two to make sure there's no drips coming off that high pressure line. But being that everything's running nice and quiet and smooth, I think I got her. Everything seems good. Okay guys, well, a couple days have passed since I've installed the power steering pump on my Neon here, and everything's running smoothly, no leaks or anything like that. And it was actually a Sunday when I installed it, so I wasn't able to get the correct Mopar power steering fluid. My local dealership was closed, so I had just topped up the system with conventional ATF, and now that I've got the correct fluid, I'm going to go ahead and flush out the complete system. You really should flush the system whenever you're installing a new pump to give it the best chance of survival. They actually recommend that you flush the system and also install an inline filter. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and I'll just be removing the low pressure return line to do that. I'm going to make a separate video on it, which I'll link up here in the description. So if you're interested, check that out. Thanks for watching Matt's Garage. Don't forget to like and subscribe.